Fisayo Soyombo is a founder of Federation for Investigative Journalism. He's right here with us in our Lagos studio. Fisayo, good morning.
Good morning, Kaide. Good to be here.
It's good to have you. I was in a gathering for International Press Freedom Day, or the World Press Freedom Day, and I was saying, is it appropriate to say Happy World Press Freedom Day or not? Because does it feel like a happy commemoration? Is it even a celebration, a commemoration? What exactly is it for you?
Happy Press Imprisonment Day.
That's how you describe it?
Yes, in a country where the police consider journalists cyber criminals, there's no other way to put it. Yeah. Between 1986 and 2003, when Bola Tinubu became president, 1,034 Nigerian journalists had been detained. By the end of the first year of Tinubu's reign, 28 journalists had been detained. That figure is equal to the annual average of the last 38 years. More than half of that happened under the military regime, which tells you that in a democracy, press freedom is just as bad or even worse than what it was in the military regime. So, press imprisonment.
And that's such a sad narrative and the reality of what it is. I mean, the theme for this year is reporting in a brave new world. Almost like what we're doing is extreme sports, is endangered, as though we are against government. So maybe we'll start from there. Is this a flaw in the mindset of those in government that journalists or journalism is against them, when in actual fact it's described as a fourth estate of the realm? So if you have a table that is standing on 3 legs, journalism is meant to be the 4th leg that democracy, governance stands on. So essentially it's helping governance. So is it a function of a flawed mentality, or I don't know, what exactly is at play here?
You've actually answered it. It's the flawed mentality by people in public office. The popular belief is that if you're a journalist, you're anti-government.
Are we anti-government?
Of course we are not.
In fact, we are pro-government in that sense, good governance.
The journalist wants a good society, a better society. Now, when government officials consider journalists anti-government, then it means that there is a disparity in the wants of the two groups. It means the people in government don't necessarily want a better society. They just want to fill their pockets. They want to push their personal agenda. They want to advance their political careers. They are there for selfish interest. And then they find people whose targets are not exactly what they want. If both parties want a better society, then we should be able to work together. If I go undercover to expose criminals trafficking Nigerians from Lagos to Burkina Faso, and the government doesn't want Nigerians trafficked to Burkina Faso, the government should want to work with me. If I expose people selling babies under the table, the government should want to work with me. The government should stop seeing me as their enemy. But that's not my experience. If we expose corruption and the government understands the gravity of corruption, understands the public benefits that get eroded when funds get stolen, they should want to work with us. So when government officials, don't want to work with journalists, consider journalists enemies, always want to arrest us, want to harass us, want to intimidate us, want to muzzle us, want to scare. There's a lot of scaremongering, and that's the part of it that is the most worrisome for me, that there's a lot of scaremongering. And then you have people saying, who have young people, graduates, say, you want to become a journalist, you want the government to keep going after you, you want to end up in prison, in police cell. There's a lot of scaremongering. And then you find that it's people then have to think long and hard. Young people have to think long and hard about whether they want to become journalists or not.
And it's that scaremongering thing that I want to follow up on. Because it's quite concerning. When you consider how the Cybercrime Act is being used, is not being used just against the press, but also other citizens who are practicing citizen journalism. How do you think that has impacted on the psyche of the people? And I ask this specifically when you consider what happened during the #EndBadGovernance protests, which was on a smaller scale compared to what happened during the NSAS protests. And we, in fact, suffered some form of censorship here with messages in our DM about how we were promoting the rights of the people to protest and what we would do if the children of people who came out to protest were arrested and all of that. How do you think that is impacting on our psyche? And what would he do anyway if there's a window of opportunity presenting itself for an advocacy to sail through for the amendment of the Cybercrime Act? Would we be prepared?
So I really don't think that the problem with the Cybercrime Act is the amendment. I know that there was a recent amendment. It's just the interpretation. The police, working in cahoots, mostly with corrupt politicians, would always find a way, to interpret what has been published as a cybercrime. It's just semantics. So you amend it, you use, a different set of words, they come back, and it's still that you've published something that is injurious to another person, But the law is clear. When that happens, you go to court. It's clear, And I hope there'll be time to talk about SLAP as well, strategic lawsuits against public participation, But even without going to court, the cybercrime law is basically, it exists, just to hound journalists.
So I want to read the section that I always cite to base my question. Section 22 is our ground norm. This is not an act, this is the Constitution. The press, radio, television, and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility and accountability of the government to the people. I think where we are, if we want to be honest, I think it's too late for us to consider ourselves friends of government. The data show otherwise. Even when you're trying to hold people to account, they think you're going against them. They try to swing it. They try to spin it in one way, or they go to the extremes that you've talked about. So I'm coming from a point of, we're not on the same boat because we don't have the same agenda. So let's be clear on that. You want to steal, I want to expose your stealing for those who are thieves. So we cannot agree. So it's foolhardy to begin to think we can sit on the same boat. So my question is, how should we protect ourselves?
So first of all, we are friends with government. The government isn't friends with us. You can be friends with someone and the person isn't friends with you. So it's not a two-way problem. It's just a one-way problem. It's how they see us. So then your question is, how do we address, how do we protect ourselves? Yes.
But the people don't see us as friends anyway.
Yes. So first thing is, I would advocate that all newspapers, all platforms, particularly digital platforms, the small ones, have to find a way to get a lawyer on retainership. It's important. So for stories that, you think will cause more than usual national interest, then a lawyer has to have a look and say, and then when it gets published and you get sued, there has to be a lawyer who says, yes, we'll do it. People don't talk about the threats of SLAP. The fact that in newsrooms, there are lots of editors who are scared. So what if they sue us? But what if they sue you? If your story is true, you should be able to defend yourself. So media houses, particularly the digital ones, really have to prioritize having permanent legal advice so that they are then not scared of going to court. Journalism in Nigeria today is more than writing skills, nose for news. Now it's you need that skill to keep watching over your shoulder. It's unfortunate, but you can't do journalism in Nigeria today and live the normal life. Every day you keep looking over your back, keep taking security trainings, digital security, physical security training, keep protecting yourself, keeping your addresses confidential, knowing the kind of, the circle that you keep. Was it on Twitter? Yeah, the spokesman of the police said there's nobody we cannot arrest. We just need to relate to one or two people close to you. Yeah, that's what I said.
I'm glad you talked about SLAP. And at the same time, you talk about legal representation, legal advice. A lot of newsrooms are challenged these days to even keep a lawyer on retainership. And then you now get a lawsuit on top of that, and you don't have, and that's the essence of SLAP, basically, to burden you with the costs and make it really difficult for you to do your job. So you're always thinking, what if I get it? What if I get it? Because you're seeing that money is not coming in. So the little one that is coming in, you're trying to protect. But thankfully, there are newsrooms that are also innovating. or are innovative rather. They are finding ways around these challenges. But I want to speak to citizen journalism. Bukola touched on it. VDM, for example, has been arrested. His whereabouts, I'll just say unknown, because there's been no official statement. All we've been seeing from EFCC is tagging other people's story, fake news, fake news. So what is the real news? The EFCC has not provided that. You had journalists, Daniel Ojukwu, a lot of journalists detained, and for hours, you didn't even know their whereabouts in a democracy. And maybe that's why you're rethinking it. Maybe it's not really a democracy in that sense. So maybe speak to citizen journalism as well, the rise of citizen journalism, the case of VDM, and where we're headed to as a nation, journalism in that sense, in the next 5 years, 10 years, with citizen journalism.
So I won't call VDM's case citizen journalism. I'll call it activism. That's not to take anything away from him. Yeah. And of course, no one, regardless of how we classify them, should be abducted, by state agents. It just tells how bad the situation is. That can happen. I don't have the facts. I don't know. I don't have the facts, so I don't want to speak on a case that I don't have facts on. But of course, he has been arrested. That's clear. More than 48 hours already. The law is clear that if you arrest, if you make an arrest if a court is within 100-kilometer radius of the police cell, the person has to be arraigned within 24 hours. And if the closest court is more than 100 kilometers away, then it has to be done within 48 hours. Clear breach of the law. But again, it's the country we are in. We are not running a democracy. We are running a pseudo-democracy. And it's unfortunate that this is happening under the watch of a man who fought military rule. That's the irony. That can pick up a citizen, if you don't know his whereabouts, there's no court arraignment, there is no statement by the agency that picked him up, which then means the intention is not to right any perceived wrong by this guy. The intention is to intimidate him, is to silence him, is to punish him. Fortunate thing is that people like that don't feel punished when you detain them. Oh, yes. I don't feel punished when you detain me.
In fact, it sort of makes you want to continue doing what you're doing.
I wouldn't say it makes me want to. My motivations are internal, not external, But I just don't like the fact that someone thinks that they can stop you on the path of truth just by punishing you, just by, detaining you. It doesn't work that way. Of course, for the rest of the public, they become interested in the person. But really, it's usually that the person thinks, you are trying to muzzle me, then I will show you that I'm resilient. So, more often than not, when you arrest, you create a buzz around the person, and maybe one or two more people then say, I want to be the next whoever.
Well, I'm hoping that, the generality of Nigerian youth will assume that undaunted position, that you say you have assumed despite your experiences. I was in a room also on Saturday where, the World Press Freedom Day was celebrated, and they spoke about something that I reflected on, the emergence of strongman politics. And of course, I don't need to elaborate on that. We know what that means. And I'm wondering what our own contribution to that is as gentlemen of the press when we look at a celebration of very politically exposed persons, the presentation of awards to politically exposed persons, the emergence of our colleagues in the print media, more often than not, as spokespersons of politically exposed persons. What's our own contribution to this system that, turns against us eventually to muzzle the press?
In your question, there's multiple answers. So first, we have to stop celebrating. Now, I get that some things are hard. We have to discuss media sustainability. We have to find a way before these things are possible. So I am not oblivious of the fact that most of these politically exposed persons are, in many cases, big financiers of media houses. So, and he who pays the piper calls the tune. So if they finance you, you have to reward them with awards, with publicity, but that's to the detriment of the society. So we have to find a way around funding and be able to serve the people with the kind of journalism we do. Stop promoting, those who are fraudulent, sort of handling frivolous awards to politicians, governor of the year, many governors of the year. You wonder what exactly what exactly they are doing. In many places, what the governors do, collect allocation from the federal government, tax the people to death. In most cases, nothing creative, but then we award them. So the media has to hold itself to higher standards and also hold public office holders to higher standards. Expose corruption, report fraud, solidarize with other journalists who get harangued, harassed for the kind of work that they do.
More collaboration. Nigerians also need to value journalism more, or journalists more, and pay for it more. Is that a conversation we should add to it too? 10 seconds.
I'm wary of, publicly funded. Anyhow you look at it, who pays the piper calls the tune. If you feed largely on donations from the public, then the public also want to control what you publish. It's dicey.
There you go. Fisayo, always a pleasure having you. A lot of people have described you as coconut head, and I think it's good for our journalism, the work that you do at the Foundation for Investigative Journalism. By the way, that is a compliment, and I'm sure you've heard that time and again.
Of course.
Fisayo Soyombo, founder, FIJ, thank you so much for your time. Clearly, this is not the end of the conversation. So from time to time, we'll keep having this. Thank you once again.
We should. Thank you, too, for inviting me.
So we just felt the pulse of the faultless state of the realm, but we're going to touch base now with government. The Minister of Education is our next guest. Stay with us.